This edition of the Ridley Report is brought to you by
YouGetGold.com with the letter U.
Now, I'm standing here with Carlton from Deerfield, and you had we've been having some interesting conversations lately about the zero aggression principle.
Right.
And for the uninitiated, just go ahead and define it for us.
Sure. So the zero aggression principle or non-aggression principle is basically the idea that the aggressing party, somebody who goes against and initiates force against another, is the one who's morally wrong.
I was wondering, what was your conversation with the police about?
None of your fucking business.
Okay.
How's that? Go get a job.
It's wrong to use force against someone else.
Yeah, wrong to
Initiate
initiate
force
it.
against
Right.
someone else.
Like for instance,
Yes.
in a practical sense, it can be very counterintuitive, because if you look at like the situation where they had the standoff with Ed Brown in Plainfield, he didn't want to pay his federal taxes, and he
Right.
holed up in his house, and he's got firearms and stuff like that, and he's going to shoot people that come at his house.
Right.
Now, the knee-jerk thing to do would be to say, well, he's crazy, he's wrong, he's the one who wants to use violence,
Right.
but he didn't initiate. They were coming for his house,
Right.
and he didn't actually fire on anyone. He wasn't the first one to fire, right?
Right.
And so even though he was nutty, he's still not the violator of the zero aggression principle. It gives you a chance to kind of, I don't know, to look at situations more objectively than the media or the authorities might let you.
Right. It definitely seems that, especially the mainstream media, really tends to not realize that sometimes the government or the police are actually the aggressor. It's, part of the non-aggression principles really also includes that you need to treat everybody as individuals and uniquely having the same rights, so that nobody has a right to really aggress against someone else.
Is that marijuana? Yes, it is.
Woohoo! Sorry,
Real?
when this battery dies.
I believe it's real. All right, fair enough.
Andrew Carroll getting arrested for touching a plant.
Whether or not they have a badge or some fancy costume or whatever. So I think in that case that you were describing, it's difficult for some people to see that actually the government coming in and trying to take away somebody's property is actually the aggressor.
It's hard to see because the government, the people are pretty professional. They have a process they go through. They seem nice in some ways. Many of them do. Many of them are nice people, and yet, they were still the ones initiating. So, you just, I guess the way I look at it, the non-aggression principle helps keep you from being blinded by demeanor.
I think that's fair. Yes, and it helps you. Really clarify an issue. So instead of just kind of going on your gut or what feels right, you can look for, well, who is really initiating violence against the other party, and decide what's right that way.
There's one thing I've been trying to do, and I've started to get some success. It's amazing that it would take so many years to do something so simple, but I've started referring to myself as an anti-aggressionist as opposed to a libertarian or a voluntarist or something like that. And if people ask me, well, what do I think about X, Y, or Z? What do I think about their plan, to spend money or tax money or whatever? And I just tell them I'm pretty much okay with anything that doesn't use, any acts of aggression.
Right.
I'm just an anti-aggressionist. And it seems like it's ethically much safer and easier to take a stand against something bad than it is to claim that something is good.
Right, definitely. I think once you make that moral argument, it's difficult for somebody to admit, it's okay to aggress. It's okay to point guns at people and force them to pay for this project or that project, even if they really don't want to. I think people want to be moral and are really uncomfortable when you're pointing out some sort of inconsistency there, that they're actually the aggressor.
Yeah. All right. Well, do you have any thoughts about like what's the place in? Do you have any thoughts about which town in New Hampshire maybe uses the least aggression? What is the most non-aggressionist place to live in New Hampshire?
I think if you're looking to deal with less aggression, it might have to deal with agents of the state a little bit less. They tend to aggress a lot. You see police going after people who've committed victimless crimes. I think it's easier to find less aggression, maybe potentially in more rural areas of the state. I'm not so sure, but it seems like there's a lot of violations of this zero aggression principle happening in in the city areas. You see people in Manchester running into problems with the police all the time, where they've done no violence at all, and they're getting handcuffed and thrown in jail and having fines put against them.
Well, my impression from having spent a fair amount of time in Deerfield and watching folks that live in Deerfield who think like me, they seem to have a pretty good relations and interactions with the authorities there.
Right.
Fairly open system, and being there, you probably hopefully noticed the same thing.
For the most part, it does seem like recently the police have been pulling over a lot of people who are allegedly committing victimless crimes of not having certain paperwork for their car, which is funny considering that burglary's actually been on the rise. It would be nice if they were going after the burglars instead of people without emission stickers.
Yeah. That's too bad. There was an incident where one of them pulled over an open carrier a few years ago, and she had a positive experience with that, so that was good. But have you given any thought to the whole concept of moving a certain number of liberty activists to one town, like trying to create one free town, or do you think that's not worth the trouble and it's just focusing on the state?
I think that's an interesting idea. I mean, the whole idea with the Free State Project is trying to move people into a more geographically centralized area of New Hampshire. I think if you take that idea one step further, it might make sense to try to get more liberty-minded people in certain areas of the state, certain towns. You'd be even more effective there, where you're further away from federal or state government. I think that's a very interesting idea.
All right, well, Carlton, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
See you out there.